Welcome everybody. Today we are starting class 2. They all stand alone on their own, particularly this one, because we're diving into the Sefirot, which is the 10 attributes. And if you remember, sorry, everybody. If you remember last week, sort of how the Sefirot came, they came in these kalim, these vessels that were sent were sent to give us like a direct link to, because there was an emptiness. Remember, there's the Simsum, Hashem retracted, there was this empty space. And so he wanted to give us his attributes to connect to be godlike. And they were sent in these kalim, these vessels, but there was so much spiritual energy that as they came down, they shattered. And there was spiritual energy all throughout the world in little shards, in everywhere but Mitzrayim, in Egypt. Mm-hmm. And that became what's called Tikkun Olam, which is, right, Tikkun Olam is not saving your neighbors who want to kill you. It's going around and collecting these sparks of holiness throughout the world. And it's one of our purposes is Tikkun Olam for the world and Tikkun on an individual basis. And so what I said that we're doing in this course is, and we're mixing sort of very mainstream Torah work with a layer of my work that I want to do with you. Like, let's see how this goes. I've been working on this for 10 years. And this is like my first, you guys are my working group, what do you call that? Like when Google sent out the new book and you got to like get it, like people got it for free. You're my new like beta testers on how it goes. And really this is actually how a lot of Torah teaching happens. And it's interesting, we know all about it from the men, but it's been transmitted this way from the women also, which is Torah is very much meant to be teaching and learning. The Lubavitcher Rebbe says, if you know an Aleph, teach an Aleph. And Torah also says that you don't actually learn Torah until you teach Torah, which is how Torah became this whole Chavrusa style, one-on-one, speak to people. So, and then also people have this idea, I don't use the word Kabbalah. I'll tell you why. This absolutely is Kabbalah, but it's also absolutely is Torah. And I feel like Kabbalah often is used as this word to like get people like it in this sort of like new agey, like do your own thing. And also there's this notion that we're not supposed to learn Kabbalah unless you're 40 years old and you're a man who's very learned, which is right, absolutely true of the actual Kabbalah in the original languages, in very confusing, very like deep, but that's not what we're doing. What the Baal Shem Tov did when he came was he made it accessible to all. And he said, no, actually, this should be taught, that we should give this over, and that we should make this accessible because this is really the way that we find ourselves when we find what we're here to do. And what's interesting is that as I matched the work that I did, you have these 10 Sefirot, and there's actually 11, and we're going to explain why. It's so Jewish, right? There's 10, but really one's up for question. So it could be 11 or 9, but no, it's, and some of them are like the midot that have a patriarch attached to them, very mainstream things that you've heard before. What we're doing new in this class is I came to this with the question of why am I here, right? I'm laying there dying. We all know the story now. And what is it all for? And so I wanted to find like what is the point? What is my purpose? Because to me it was really clear. The question of what is my mission, what is my purpose was answered by why was I created? Now, I think that not all the world does that, right? They say, what is my purpose? Like, what is my I? What is my me? What is my thing? As opposed to the fact that there was somebody who created us. You have to believe that there was a creator in order to understand the impact and the importance of who you are as an individual, that you are important enough to be created, right? And that how we find ourselves is through that relationship with the creator. And how we become co-creators is with the relationship with the original creator. And how we learn how to be co-creators is how did he do it? And his blueprint for the creation of the world was Torah. Before he created us, before he gave us Torah, Hashem's blueprint, Torah says this, his blueprint was Torah itself. And he said to be godlike, right? And how do we be godlike? So he gave us the Sefirot. And that's what we're going to get into. And the piece that is new for me that we're working through is that I found all of these different reasons on why we were created, right? So the Ramchal says we were created in order to become more perfect, to perfect ourselves, knowing that we would always fail. The Baal Tanya says that we were created because Hashem had his taste. You had a taste, like a desire, like a taina, like you have craving or something. And of course, everybody has often heard that we were created to create a dwelling place on this earth. And then you know of these concepts of like mitzvot and tshuva and tikkun, the ideas of that people will say, oh, well, this is what you were created for. So this seemed like a lot to me, a little conflict. But what I found was when I lined it up with the Sefirot, it actually fit really, really cleanly, like crazy cleanly. And I wanted to tell you a bit on how we got here. But before I do that, let's dive in. Let's dive into the work itself, and then we're going to we can go from there, okay? Because I know some of this is, you have a sheet here that is the 10 Sefirot. It's not great because of the color. I've been working on this. You would think when this is like hundreds and hundreds of years old that there would be many, many illustrations online, and there's not. So I started working on one, which you have like a bad copy of here. But I'm going to like complete this more so that you can see it. And then I also want to, in how we're going about the class, I realized that it all fit in very clearly one-on-one, but there was an error where last week I had said it was about Ketzer and really last week was about Chochmah. So I've corrected that. And then I'll tell you because it makes perfect sense. It makes a lot of sense now, you'll see, but it's very clean. So there's 10 Sefirot. These are the divine attributes. They're divided kind of in 3 and 7. So the top 3 are Keter, which is like crown, and the head. And each one of the Sefirot is attributed to a part of the body. So we'll work through the parts of the body, but to line this up is your head, your shoulders here, your thighs here, your heart, the groin, and at your feet. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then on each side, you have a male, female, and a natural constriction and an opening up. Okay. And then in the middle is about balance. So on the right, you see it says expansion and mercy. That is your male side. And really, from a very... Do you have another copy of this? So I have a couple there. If you can share to... Yeah, it was... Yeah. But this one's going to be much better. Yeah. When I get this done, this one's going to be... Because I started adding all this other stuff. But I think it needs color and contrast. Yeah. Contrast, exactly. So that's what you guys are getting is my mind at work as it's working in real time. You're seeing this all unfold. So that when you have the book, right, and you remember that you were here, like through all of you're going to be like, I remember when she worked that out, to get here. So, oh, sorry, somebody's in a waiting room. Sorry about that, everyone. So, so your right side is male and expansion. And you think, well, what does that mean? Because it's strictly, I'm going to mute this here. If I can. Oh, it means I'm muted. So I need the other person to mute. Oh my gosh. Sorry. Other people, can you please mute yourselves on Zoom? Thank you. So think about it just anatomically, right? Which is a male through his male anatomy gives out, right? And a woman through woman's anatomy receives. And so, so the attributes of Hashem are also male, female, and also balancing. Because what we all know is that if you go too far on either side, you're never in the right in the middle, right? Right. And so there's a constant balancing all the time. And that is the balancing of this world, male, female, expansion, contraction, tough, gentle, right? And it's about finding that. And also this is like the original Myers-Briggs. So you know how people have like a personality test and what is your nature? And the same thing with astrology, with Mazel. So it's not that we don't believe in astrology. We do. It's all over the Torah. It's that through our actions, we have the ability to go past whatever the natural order of things are from Mazel, from which would be astrology or spirits. It's kind of like that includes the angels and is all included in the word Mazel. And to go beyond our capabilities as a person. Right. So the Myers-Briggs and the other personality tests categorize what your strengths are and then to feed to those strengths. Torah, you find what your strengths are and you learn how to grow them and expand them by countering them. Right. So if your natural, we'll just look at, I want to start with Chesed and Gevurah for a second, even though it's right in the middle, because you know it. Right. You've heard Chesed all the time. It's loving, it's kindness, it's giving, it's openness. And Gevurah is discipline and it's judgment and it's strength, right? So the Chesed is the boundless love that Avram had, right? The boundless opening. The Gevurah is the discipline of Yaakov. That even during the Akedah, that even when he didn't even have to know why. Because he accepted the judgment fully. But to get to the middle, you have to have like the emotion of the beauty and the perfection, which is Sefirot. And so we see that, and that's Yaakov, right? And why is it Yaakov? Because all of Yaakov's offspring are holy. So he really was viewed at as epitomizing this balance between endless love and within limitations. And so this is all of the Sefirot. And so if I am by nature too harsh and judgmental as a person, Myers-Briggs would tell me to like take a managerial job in OSHA where I'm like responsible for a lot of rules and yelling at people, right? And Mazel, astrology would just tell me to find the right mate with the right set of whatever the set of attributes are that they said, right? But the Sefirot says, no, let's learn how to be godlike and let's learn how to take what's natural, what we're good at, and how to make it more successful, right? And how to be better versions of ourselves. Because that's what it's like, how to be godlike by being a better version of myself, not being a better version of you. So when I imagine the Sierra, like, Star Trek, right? Where you can stay with me here. And it would get into that like teleporter thing and it would like beam me up Scotty, right? Right. And it would like, so I'd imagine that's like the energy, imagine this like spiritual force coming down. It kind of works, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like this, you can't see it, but it's there all the time. So how do you connect to it? And what we're trying to do is connect to that, because the more I learn how to be godlike, the better version of me I can be, the more I'm living in my purpose. And so when we talk about finding our purpose, remember we talk about 3 different levels. So we talk about the collective level of being a human being. And the Sefirot are in there. Here are all of the attributes. And then we talk about what is our purpose as a Jew. And then we talk about what is my purpose individually. And so I track those against the Sefirot so that it makes a kind of a natural progression. And another idea that you want to hold on to when understanding this is there's this idea of going down in order to go up. And it's a very Torah concept and when I've told you that how we're going to learn about why we were created, and therefore what our purpose is, we're going to learn about how we were created, because in understanding how we were created, We understand how Hashem operates, our relationships, and what we're here to do. So this idea of going down, like you know it in my story, right? I say the best thing that ever happened to me was almost dying, right? And 100%, I mean that. And you hear it from the Chatufim as they're returning, and you hear it from the injured soldiers. I mean, the best thing that we could have found is in this darkness. But this is a universal concept in Torah, which is that you have to go down in order to go back up. The physics of spirituality work that way. So imagine, in order for us to be created, Hashem had to make space, emptiness, right? And then he had to send himself down, send his attributes down so that we should be able to reach up and grab them. And then in order to make space for evil, which had to happen because we're only co-creators if we actually have a choice. It's just that simple. And we have to do the work because there's no way to accomplish something without going through it. And I'll give you a really simple analogy. A marathon run, okay? Mm-hmm. And they like worked out and they're doing Ironman or whatever, right? And they've been lifting weights and they like get through and it's like boiling sun and they're going and going and going. And they finally get to the finish line. And right before the finish line, a guy walks up. So I didn't feel like doing the work. I got a free pass and walks across the finish line. Okay? It's not the same. It's not the same. There's no way to get through except to do the work to get through. So really, we were created with a model that made the getting through much more gentle. We're just very stubborn, right? We just don't always like to do the work. So sometimes it gets harder. But remember what I said about Nisyonos. Nisyonos are the challenges that happen to us. It has to be the hardest thing you have to get through. You have to get through it in order to be closer to Kadosh Baruch Hu who loves you. It's customary for you, only you. And you have everything you need to get through it. Right? You already have everything you need to get through it. So we have to go through and we have to do the work and we have to have a choice. Because, when people talk about the terrorists and the horror and they say, oh, they're animals. They're animals. I mean, you can support that if you look at behaviors. I say, that's a compliment. Don't pay them that compliment. Because an animal, if a fox gets injured, a fox will lash out. A hyena will attack for no reason. A bear will, because that is what they are programmed to do, because they are animals and they have an animal soul. We were here and given full choice. And the only way it can truly be a choice is if the opposite option looks just as good. And so evil is when the truth becomes distorted, when a lie looks appealing. Because if it wasn't appealing, we would have no choice. Okay? If the chocolate cake was not delicious, we would not get kol kavod for not eating it, right? Right? You go on and on, right? With every single time, with every vice. They're wonderful. Like, I'm about you. So I had non-kosher food until I was 18. And I'm from Philadelphia. And Philadelphia is okay, yes. Most popular is the cheesesteak, right? And people were like, oh, wow. You must think that's so disgusting. I'm like, are you kidding? And Hashem gave me a little note. Gavriella, you get one free pass meal. What would it be? It would be a Pat's cheesesteak with like lots of cheese whiz and great. And it was delicious. Yeah. Right? So I made a choice at 18 to no longer have extremely delicious cheesesteaks because I wanted to feed my body. I wanted to start treating my body as the holy vessel that it is. but not because I didn't think cheesesteaks were absolutely delicious. And all of these decades later, I still am getting a bit of a craving as I'm mentioning it, right? So, so there has to be choice, but there has to be a way through. And the Sefirot give us it's like a lantern, right? It's like a Sherpa, like you're going through the dark and somebody's got a lantern. That's what the Sefirot are. And they are actually light, but it's really a way of guiding us to how do we be our best versions of ourselves. And so they come down, the top three are Keter, and then you have Bina, Chokmah, and Das. Now that's where you have the difference between the two, which is some Kabbalists say that the top is Keter, the crown, and then Chabad and some of the other Kabbalists say that the third is Das. In fact, if you know Chabad, it's actually an anagram for Chokmah, Bina, Das. And so we're going to kind of address both because, we're equal opportunity teachers here. But if you look at any of those top ones, there's still three, whether it's Keter or Dot. Those three are like the imanus, the mothers. They are unknowable. They are our mind. They are our deepest connection on how we actually connect to the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and we can't fully understand them. But we're going to try to, because through that, we also find our way to our best version of ourselves. And Chokmah is remember, Chokmah is the right side is your expansiveness, your maleness. So Chokmah is actually where I'm good. It's intuition. It's creativity, right? I was a startup CEO. So like in the Myers-Briggs, I was ENTJ, right? Like it's right. And my mazel on Aries first day coming from Pisces, right? So I have all this kind of fiery, I can think it and do it in a second, right? And that's Chokmah. And you got this inspiration, this creativity, but it's also potential. It's the possibility of what can be. And for those of us who are, sort of like the CEO, entrepreneur, creative types, we can see something out of nothing, right? And the people who are like that, and whenever we talk about finding your strengths and balancing it, they come from this, right? And what's on the other side, especially if they're married to somebody on the other side? Bina is the analytical. I want to see the numbers. I want the information, right? I want to process that. I want to take the data and analyze it into actionable points. But then in order to make it actionable, I'm going to make it dot, or das, depending on your accent, which is like the combination of synchronized understanding. So you see that each of these is like a balance of our mind, which is what the top three are. And as I work on this piece, I've done a better job of showing you the top three are intellect, and then we go down, and then we get into emotion, and then we get into action. So these three are the intellect. Now the bottom seven are the male. They're all attributed with a patriarch, and they're also called something that you really have heard many times in your life, midos. So you've heard about midos, you've heard about character development, you've heard about mussar, you've heard about making through Torah. That is Sefirot, interestingly enough, because people will say, oh, I'm not into Kabbalah, but they're teaching midos to everyone. There are the 7 ways that you can work on your emotion and your action to be godlike. And so from there, we talked about Chesed and Gevurah and Tiferet. And then on the action side, you have Netzach and Hod. And then in the middle, Yesod. And here's what's really interesting is that Netzach is attributed with Moshe Rabbeinu. And some people define it as ambition, but it's also endurance. Right? It's also going out and sticking with it, right? And going out and doing it and going out and making it happen, right? That outward, he jumped into the sea. Actually, he wasn't the first one, but he was among the few people in the head of the line, right? He went out, he did. Whereas Hod is, and it's Aaron HaKohen, which was his brother, and it's humility. And it's joy, it's holding, it's saying thank you. It's not having to do it all, right? It's being able to sit in acceptance. And and so you'll also start to see where I'm at, the purposes that we're going to be going through during this course. So on Hod is when we're going to be talking about receiving joy and making ourselves a vessel to receive. But during Netzach, during endurance, during ambition, we're going to be talking about work and money, right? So it actually really fits so nicely. And then Yesod, which is Yosef, it's sort of, if you imagine like the perfect balance of communication, right? Where you're doing both. You're like being ambitious, you're going and you're doing, but you're also able to sit and be like, appreciate the sunset, right? And then you're right in the middle. And it is from a body standpoint, it is the male productive organ. Now, the last one, Malchut, is somewhere depending on the Kabbalist between your feet and your knees, but also believed to be the female. So Malchut, kingship, is actually, even though it's up and down, is still a balance between the masculine of Yesod and the feminine of Malchut. Okay, so that's why there's the body connection on that. And Malchut is literally about kingship and sovereignty. And we're going to be talking in our class about the purpose of being a shliach, of being an emissary, of being an emissary for Hashem. Because that is, we are literally, Hashem created the world with words. With words. And so words take a lot of importance. And we are quite literally the spokespeople for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we see that since October 7th, right? Like when you have to say stuff that you never might have said before, because you can feel it. You feel that like we have an obligation suddenly to talk about what's true and what's light. And we always have that. And it's not, Chabad does not own shlichus. The state of Israel sends beautiful couples all around the world as shlichus, not all religious, to promote Israel. Shlichus is being an emissary for Hashem. And even if we go back to Kabbalah, the Lubavitcher Rebbe said every one of us has a shlichus. But then go beyond Hasidus and go beyond Kabbalah. This is a very basic notion in why we were created. We were created to be the emissaries for Hashem, to be co-creators, to find the light, but also to lead the way, to be a nation that leads the way, even when no one else is listening, right? And that is part of our purpose. And then what I do here is I take us back up to Keter at the end, as where we talk about our tafkid, which is our individual purpose, our individual mission. Remember, you have these three. So you have the mission of the whole world, all of humanity. Then you have the mission as a Jew, and then you have your individual mission. And the reason it works so perfectly with Keter at the top is that Keter literally means that it's unknowable, and that in that unknowingness, you can find your true self. Because in that, here, if you imagine, we have all of this gashmias, all of this life, all of this work and body and aches and pains and right. But when we go up at the level of Keter, it's actually beyond all of this, right? And so it's like, what is my neshama uniquely qualified to do? What am I here for a much greater purpose? And we talked about this idea of grow, right? And that there's like an angel for every single one of us, for every blade of grass that has no other job than to strike it and say, grow. Strike it, meaning get it in however it can hear, whether it's a patch or a kiss or whatever it is, so that that blade of grass knows that it has not just the potential to grow, but has been given everything it needs to grow, and that's its mission, right? And so that is our unique purpose, is to grow and to become more godlike. And so we learn how to do that through the Sefirot. So I feel like this is a lot of information. And so I'm going to break and see if there's any questions here and how you guys would like me to go. because there's lots of ways we can go from here. Yes.
So I'm very outspoken. I have to share a lot. I come from a very strong Lubavitch background.
Okay.
I did not go to Chabad schools. I went to Lubavitch from 1956 through 1969. My family is not really that religious. It's a long story. I totally, completely agree with you that you have to go down to go up. I do not know your whole story. I can only imagine, but I have my own story. And it just makes tremendous sense to me. Everything that you have said, I learned in elementary school. And it's amazing to me. We are talking about, I'm 73 years young. So what became new, I knew a very, very, very long time ago. And I honestly rebelled against a lot of it because of the way it was given to me. And now here it's that again.
In a much gentler, nicer way.
Yes.
With it.
Right. And it's just really, really funny. This, how you go around. I'm literally back where I started.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely amazing to me. I don't like the word Chabad because I use it, I see it as a trademark. I know what Lubavitch and Chabad are different. Chabad started about when they started having telethons about 25, 30 years ago.
I'm listening. I just want to see if there's comments. Are there comments here from Substack? You know, part of what we talk about and what we do is that our lives have these repetition, and those are the things to pay attention to, right? Because once you accomplish something, once you go through it, you don't have to go through it again. So the question for me always is on things that I go through again and again, like, why am I going through this again? What is happening that I have to pay attention to? I'm not sure if I can see the chat. Yeah. Okay. If you guys have a message, try to get it to me. So paying attention to that. Yeah.
So I had a thought. So when you go through difficult things or you accomplished what children or did this or that, I just had, as you're speaking, I'm like, I've done many things. Now what?
Exactly.
Am I done with my accomplishments?
So we talked so this is such a great question. And we started talking about this last week, which is that you have up to 7 neshamas in your body. So based on the fact that we were all here at Mountain Torah, at the giving of Torah, a unique neshama. And then reincarnation is real. And in fact, one of the fundamental issues of faith, as issued by Maimonides, the Rambam, is that we believe in the reincarnation, the resurrection of the dead. And so what happens is that you come and you accomplish something or you don't. And if you don't, you come back. That's it's not an Indian only concept. It came from us. And you come back in order to accomplish that thing that you missed that go around. And so our bodies here are actually pieces of up to 7 different neshamas that are here to finish doing certain tasks. And so it makes perfect sense when you understand it that way, because I've used this example, right? When I was a 20 something with young kids, I had a very clear purpose.
Right.
And it was not the purpose that I have now when I accomplished that thing, right? I had a very clear purpose when I was dying in the nursing home and blind and in the wheelchair. And I had a purpose to survive. I 2000 did it. And so now I have a different purpose. And so that's where I came to. And how do we find our unique purpose at this exact moment? This moment. So think about the fact that everything that happened to you and all of the things that you love and hate, all of the things that you're good at and loathe, all of that was custom tailored for you. In fact, you chose your parents. So before you came here on this earth, you're standing there with 2 malachim, two angels, and mamash, really, they show you the whole thing. Your parents, your siblings, your crazy Aunt Mabel, your years of poverty. They show you the whole thing. And you're also given all of Torah. You know all of Torah. And so you understand why all of those things are happening. because you understand the gift in each of those for your neshama to get through. And you choose. You choose your parents. I want to tell you this. You choose your parents. So the next time you're like ready to sit on somebody's chair and kvetch about like your parents who didn't love you enough, you chose them. Okay? And your kids chose you.
Okay.
So you let them know that. I know. It doesn't, Mike, maybe your kids will listen to that kind of but, right? Because it was so a unique, so it shows it because we knew it was what was best for us. And I want you to imagine this. No challenges happen to us unless we need them to happen.
Mhm.
No challenge happens unless we need it to happen. No challenge happens to us that we don't have everything we need to get through before the challenge happens to us. And no challenge happens for us that isn't the hardest possible thing we can go through. But me, not you. It's my hardest thing, but I can get through it because I was given everything. Okay. So when we chose our parents, when we chose our challenges, we knew that we had everything we needed to get through, and we knew and we understood why. Now imagine if we can live with that same level of trust that Hashem loves us completely and is only giving us what we need without understanding the why. And this is right here. Okay, so we're standing there with the malachim. We make our choice. We choose our parents, and we choose our whole life. And we know all of Torah, and we understand why we're coming on this earth. We understand our mission. And then, before we come down, we're touched right here, and we forget everything. And this is the plan. And it's actually, there's all kinds of stories about children who were born without it, and the fact that they actually needed it to be corrected because of this whole interesting cosmic. So really it's about finding a way to be quiet, to find the truth that I already know to be true, which is that everything that's happened to me was for a reason. Everything I love, I love. Everything I loathe, I have a distaste for, right? What comes easy for me comes easy for me. What comes hard is still hard. Like our nature, our nurture, all of it. The answer is nature versus nurture. The Torah answer is yes. All of it. Because at this exact moment in time, when I take all of that, everything that's led me here, and all of my triumphs and trials and tribulations and everything that starts with a T, and maybe things that start with other letters too, where that intersects with what the world needs most from me at this moment, at this unique moment in time. And so I'll explain to you mine, and because I think it'll help you, you'll get it, right? I started to talk about this, which is that I was 10 years ago, I was blind, electric wheelchair with only nutrition left to die in a basement, right? But before that, I had a very interesting career. I've done media. I produced for 2020 and Good Morning America. I ran companies. I had marriages. I and divorces. I had all kinds of things that I loved doing. I ended up getting into universal design because I was 10 years in a wheelchair. It didn't make sense for me. So I became a universal design expert, and I ended up talking on stages around the world about better design for regardless of ability, right? That made sense. And so October 7th happened, and like almost every Jew, because we felt a call, right? We felt a call. We felt, people said, like, why did you come in the Balagan? Why did you come in the Balagan? I say, it's like this. When a house is on fire, you run away, right? You heard this from me. When it's your house, you run towards it. When it's your family trapped inside, you run in, right? So all of us, however we did it, we showed up. We felt it. We felt that call to show up. So the question was, in a post-October 7th world, with all of this crazy stuff that I had, from the dying to the network television production to the whatever else it was, what was I uniquely qualified to do at this moment in time? Now, my skills, I'm a writer, I'm a speaker, but I'm also an analyst, as it turns out. And I also write, there's a lot of things that I enjoy doing. But what I understood really quickly, that what the world needed most after October 7th, that I was uniquely qualified to do, was give hope. And it makes perfect sense when I say it out loud, right? Right? Because my story, that it's too clear that it's not based on my merit or based on something I did or unattainable to anyone, because it was unattainable to me, because I'm no better or different than everybody else. And so I understood that at this point in my life, I was uniquely qualified to give hope. And that became my mission for now. It was not the mission. I was not given hope 10 years ago. Like when I was like smelly cripple me, like I was not, like I was working on other things. I was maybe teaching people endurance, right? Showing up. And when I was a single mom, so it's really getting to that place of saying, at this moment in time, what are the challenges that are happening to me? Pay attention, because they're happening for a reason, because you need to learn something, because you need to go through something. And FYI, everybody is just a play actor in this amazingly customized act that is how to get closer to Hashem. Like, the whole reason we're here, right, is to become better versions of ourselves, so that we become more godlike, so that we cleave and we get closer to Kadosh Baruch Hu, who loves us. And so all of these things, when somebody comes up and yells at me for something I didn't do, and I got hot, right? I'm a little hot. So, and I can go like, want to, but when I can stop for a second, when somebody yells at me or does something crazy, and realize, wait a second, this is not about whatever nonsense he's yelling about. This is about the fact that there's something that I have to be paying attention to. Right. So, like, for example, we have a day that we're going to die. Now, that day can change because your din can change, because we have the ability to do things that can change our judgment through our actions. And that's why you don't rely on mazel, because we know that when we do tshuva and we do tikkun and we do more mitzvos, and we're more needed. But in general, we have a day. Now, so is that death going to be from a drunk driver, or from a falling, from a construction that wasn't done properly, or from a bad drug? So part of that could be based on how the whole story needs to play out for us and how it needs to play out for everybody else. Right? So a drunk driver who doesn't get in the car changes their din and won't kill the person they were meant to kill. But if that person is meant to still die that day, they'll die a different way. And so everybody, I know this sounds kind of crazy, but everything that everybody says, everything that everybody does, the real question is what do I need to learn here? Why is this happening to me? And what kind of person do I want to be in response to it? Because that's the only thing standing in the way of me being my best me is me. And it's up here, right? And it's here, and it's like the anger, the fear, or the despair, or the loathing, or right? It's all of these things. So you think about one of the most beautiful brachas of all time is a Asher Yatzar. The Asher Yatzar is what we say after we go to the bed. And many people forget or don't say it, but think about it. So Asher Yatzar would say, thank you so much. If something was blocked, I would die. Okay? But it's not just our body. When we block our ability to accept joy through anger, when we block our ability to feel love through loneliness, when we block our ability to accept good by feeling that we deserve something different, right? And so meditation is also a completely Jewish notion. And the whole idea of meditation is, how do I empty myself out? How do I empty myself out so that I can receive, so that I can hear, so that I can be as aligned as possible to my best version, which is what Hashem wants me to be. And so breathing, meditating, picking like a word, or they use a mantra, but it's the same idea. These are all Torah concepts. But the Torah being not to focus on, not to make it about something outside me. It's not about a Buddha, right? It's not about a Avodah Zarah. It's not making something else. It's about saying, how do I just stop and be, right? Which is what Shabbat is about, right? Shabbat is about saying, and it was good, and it was good enough, And so what happens when we stop? What happens when we stop? Well, for those of us who keep Shabbat, we know that beautiful things happen. Beautiful things happen when we turn off our phone, when we stop with the computers, when we stop. Now imagine all the things beautifully that can happen emotionally, spiritually, when we stop, when we let it go. And you can imagine it. There's a reason the Sefirot are talked about in terms of light and energy. That Hashem is light. Everything is left. Evil is the absence of light. It's darkness, right? So your light, even though, the problem is that every lie has a bit of truth, right? And every distortion came from an originally good concept. And so a lot of these ideas that are taught, where you kind of take this new age and you take a bunch of Jewish concepts, but just strip it of God and Torah and truth, but you keep all the rest, right? The problem is that it started with truth. So you hear people talk about find your light, right? As if you're going to find it, but for real, find your light. It's just do it in a really healthy, beautiful Torah way, in a true way, and trust your intuition, trust your God, trust that you know what is right. Oftentimes, the struggle in getting to the answer is in trying to convince ourselves that it's not as clear and evident as it was all along, right? So what are the things? What has happened to me? What am I uniquely qualified for? Where are my skills? Where does my heart sing? What do I love? Take all of that goodies and then look out at what the world needs most in the way. And it's really that simple. It can get much more complicated. I want to break again and see about questions, because I want to make sure we're here together. Any questions, thoughts, more that you want? Let me just check our Substack if I can. Hey, Stephen. Hey, Tehila. I'm not sure. Can you guys try tapping in so I can see if the text is working, if the chat's working? Just see you're here. All right, I don't know. Okay, so again, the top three are your intellects, the middle are your emotions, the bottom three are your actions. The right is your male, expansion, giving. The left is your constriction, severity, and your female. And each one of the seven are attributed to a patriarch, and that's how we learn. And that's actually the last thing that I will touch on, is sort of how we learn by modeling, right? And how we learn by relationships. And Judaism is not an isolated religion, right? So you're supposed to go make yourself a friend and find a Rav, right? This Pirkei Avos is very basic. Have yourself a guide and a leader, and have yourself somebody that you can grow from. And the idea of a Masfia is somebody who helps you grow at that exact moment in time. And so we talked last week about the idea with the Simsum and the space. And so am I growing? Are you growing? And so am I growing in these areas? And how do I know how to grow? Because the patriarchs and the matriarchs, they show me the way, because Torah shows me a guidebook. And so if you look at each of the 7 that are attributed to them, when you think about who they're attributed to, it starts to make sense that you start to understand by their actions. And it's one of the reasons why we go over stories from Torah, is to understand how to be more godlike from what they have taught us. And then also, while this is all happening, there are 4 different levels of the world. So there are multiple planes of sort of like being and reality happening all at the same time. And so there are different reasons and moments in terms of the question of why am I here? What am I here for? There can be multiple answers for that at the same time. And I'm not being tricky, but you know this also. So one, you could be doing multiple mitzvahs at the same time. Like I'm living in Israel, I'm teaching Torah, doing that. But it can also be sort of different layers of things that are happening, right? So an emergency responder responds to and provides medical care. That was one mission, but does so while wearing a kippah. That could be another mission. And then like teaches the person a prayer for Gumel, for survival after the person survives, another mission. And so there are ways that you can be serving many parts of your own growth and others. So it's really, I just want to, anything else that you guys want me to hit on? Because I really want to end on time and start on time, but I also know that this is the first time I'm giving this over. And so I really want to fill you out in terms of what do you feel you know about the Sefirot? What do you feel is so really confusing? Where would you like to go in terms of the Sefirot themselves? No? Okay. Big questions, no problem.
It's good.
So I'm gonna end then by telling you sort of the story of how this class came about and Rabbi Breida was. So many years ago I told you I was about Shuva. I was in my early 20s. One of the things that really, really hurt me was my father had a living will, and he wanted, if he reached a point where he was dependent only on devices, he wanted to be disconnected from the devices and left to die. It was all theoretical, but I was pretty young about Shuva. This really upset me because my understanding was that I could not facilitate the end of death as suicide or unplugging or and I heard this really dynamic legal speaker, Rabbi Yaakov Reiterowitz, speak. I was in my 20s, he's a bit older than me. And he was talking all about all the laws of death and dying. And I went up to him after, this was heavy, heavy on and I said, what do I do? And he said, look, honor your parents, mother and father. That's an absolute responsibility all the time. In the time of death, the most important thing to do is honor their neshama. They may not always understand what they need, what their neshama needs. But as his daughter, you need to honor his neshama. And so you keep him alive. And it just gave me this incredible peace that there was a way of understanding the law and applying it to my life that gave me this peace emotionally. And then fast forward, I had my youngest child. So she's now 19 years old. So I was 30, in my late 30s when I had mid 30s when I had her. So this was about over a decade later. I was living in Baltimore, and my youngest was a couple months old. Then I had to go in for my second, third, and fourth back surgeries that failed. And then I ended up longer. And I'm a nursing mom. I really believe in nursing. I'm like really like because I nursed my first, and after that I was just like hooked, and I was like, none of my kids ever had ear infections, and I was like, yay, like everybody should nurse. But really important to me. Because I believe this. Okay. But I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and the hospital would not lend me a pump to pump and dump so that I could continue to nurse when I got home, because I was not on the OB floor. I was on the nerve floor. And whoever knows how, this woman came up with a rented pump And she came every day from an hour away, so 2 hours driving. And that woman was Rebbetzin Sally Breitowitz. And like literally the Hakaras HaTov I had was like unbelievable, right? Because and my daughter grew up like hearing about this. Well, then my Rav for many years, the one who took my son and got him on a plane to yeshiva, the one who all of this is done in honor of. I do all of these talking for complete refuah shlema, for Chaim Mitzvah, ben Bracha Chaya, and he came from the same chevra as Rabbi Breitowitz. We were all part of like this sort of group in Maryland and then near Yisrael, which my daughter and my youngest daughter ended up living in near Yisrael for a summer when she was 8. And so there was this back and forth of Rabbi Breitowitz in and out of my life. My son ended up being a teacher at Or Sameach, which is where he is now. He is now we all made Aliyah, and Rabbi Breitowitz is now the head Rav of all of the Or Sameach chain of yeshivas and programs. And my son is a Rebbe there. And so I reached out to him about some things. And then Rabbi Goldberger got very sick. And he was like my person. He was like, like there I was lying in the bed in the nursing home. And he got on a plane and took my 2 girls across the country to go to overnight camp. This was love. This was somebody who, and he got late stage lung cancer. And it all has happened while I was here. And so I reached out to Rabbi Breitowitz because I felt like I was floating. Like I had I didn't have my Rav, my brother, my person, my Sherpa, my everything. And because Rabbi Breitowitz came from the same circle, but you have to understand, like Rabbi Breitowitz is like a big time guy, like big Talmud Chacham, like every letter that when somebody has a book out and they want a letter, they like wait for him. Like he's very trusted. Some people I've heard wait a year for his sistema. But they say it's worth it. So I was waiting to do this class and I thought, Rabbi Cass is taking a really big jump, letting a single woman teach a class on creation and Kabbalah and Musar, like to men and women, like to the open community. And the sort of the idea of Haskama is for people to say, look, there's somebody else's look. So I sent everything to Rabbi Breitowitz, the course description. Now, you understand, he's like, Or Sameach is very Litvish, very like near Israel, very like, I sent him everything. And I'm like, look, I can't even learn in the original language. I have to do it in Hebrew and I'm like uneducated. I'm sure everything's wrong. So if you can just look at it and tell me like everything that's wrong, because I'm sure it's all totally wrong. And like, but just like maybe guide me. And within hours, he sent me back and he said, it's so amazing. It's so beautiful. And I'm so inspired by the work you're doing. Keep at it. And this is like the magic of when we're being true to ourselves, right? When we're doing what we're meant to be doing, when we're doing something that the world needs. I'm an unlikely emissary. I'm like midlife, weirdly American, too loud, not educated, too successful, too everything, right? But like Hashem chose me, right? And he chose you guys to go on this path together. Like we're actually on a path that we all selected being here in this room. And when we're in truth, the world lines up with that, right? Our world lines up with it. And you know it. And we know it. And so what I really want to leave you with this week is take a minute, some minute this week, and just try to listen to your own self. Just be quiet. And I mean, goodness, we live in Gan Eden. You can do it at the beach. You can do it at the promenade. You can do it in your bathroom. You can do it in your living room. Like I lost 22 kilos since I arrived in Israel. pretty amazing, right?
Mhm.
And so, like, how did I do it? Where did I start? And we'll talk about this later. But the Rambam talks about exercise. He says, take 5 minutes, get your heart rating, and have it be in joy.
Hmm.
And that's where I started. Right? I started with 5 minutes alone in my apartment, and what brought me joy? Dancing. So I turned on the music and I found joy and I started to dance. Right? And so it's these little things. It's the showing up in the minute, but saying that you're going to take a minute, 5 minutes to be honest and listen to yourself because you are an amazing, amazing person. The world absolutely needs you. Otherwise, you would not be here. You were created by a creator who loves you completely and has given you everything you need to be completely successful. And so I just encourage you to believe that, believe in yourself, because Hashem already done. That's all. Thank you. Thanks, everyone, who joined on Zoom. Thank you to Substack. I'll catch you guys in recordings. Thank you so much. Send me messages if I didn't see whatever your questions were. Bye-bye.
Take a look at